The Fujifilm X-T3, a camera packed with more features and high-end specs than cameras 3 times its price. 4K 60? Yup. 10-bit in camera? Yup. Dual card slots? Yep. And awesome autofocus? Oh, heck yes! Can this become the new king of online content creation? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. When I first heard of the X-T3, I basically ignored it. I've never personally used a Fuji camera before, and the retro look, I mean, that's not really something I'm into. However, once I started digging into what this little camera can do, I started getting awfully excited. And in fact, this might be the camera that I'm most excited about at the back half of 2018. But before we get too far into this video, I do want to thank my friends over at B&H Photo for sending this to me to use. If you'd like to get your very own X-T3, there will be links in the description below because, whew, I assume you'll want one after this because I'm probably gonna end up buying one too because, okay, I'll show you here in just a second. It's pretty good. First up, let's cover some of the basic specs to get us all on the same page. And to further clarify, I make home videos and YouTube videos. I'm not a professional photographer, nor am I a professional videographer. So those are the specs that I'm going to hone in on, you know, the specs that matter to somebody that has a quick online turnaround. The X-T3 has a 26 megapixel BSI X-Trans CMOS sensor. It comes with 425 point hybrid autofocus system. It has improved autofocus tracking and face eye detection in video. It can capture 10-bit 420 H.265 internal into the camera, which is 4K 60 frames per second up to 400 megabits per second, and it has dual UHS 2 card slots. Another big thing that I really like is it has a USB-C type connector that can be used to charge the battery while you're using the camera. Physically, the X-T3 feels great. I mean, it feels like a very high quality piece of gear. It's a little smaller in hand than my GH5, so even though I don't have the largest hands, even my bottom fingers, you know, you can see here, they still kind of hang over this. I mean, it doesn't really bother me that much as I don't do a lot of handheld shooting, but if you have bigger hands, you might want to get the battery grip. You might want to get the battery grip. One of the nice things on Fuji cameras in general, I guess, I mean, I've never used one before, but is on top, you have physical dials for both the shutter speed and the ISO. That's pretty darn cool. I'm a big believer in more physical buttons. I mean, it drives me crazy when I have to search through a menu system for a function. I just want to be able to do it on camera, tap a button, flip a switch, just do it. On the side is the accessory port. More on this later. This is actually my favorite part. I'm excited to show you. I promise it'll be a second, but this is my favorite part. And on the other side, you'll have the dual SD card slots. The back gives you a pretty standard setup of buttons and dials. And here you'll also find the semi-articulating touchscreen. It's not fully articulating, and I do wish it was fully articulating, but I'm getting more and more used to just not having that feature. And it's not a deal breaker. You can always get a monitor, so I wish, but you know, it'd be nice, but it's not a deal breaker. Something else that's really nice about this basic setup is the kit lens. Now, generally when you get a kit lens, it's middling quality. You know, it's functional, but nothing to write home about. Well, darn it, if this 18-55 is not a fantastic lens. It feels like it's totally made out of metal, has functioning switches built onto the side, and it has some pretty decent OIS. Other camera manufacturers take note, this is how to make a kit lens. Okay, and here's a quick vlogging, like walking around talking test of the Fuji X-T3. Now, you know, one of the problems that I'm sure we've already talked about is that there is no flip screen on this, so I don't actually know if I'm recording right now. You know, the autofocus will help a lot in that, just to make sure that you're in focus, but I just don't even know if I'm recording. Hopefully we're recording. Also another, it's heavy. Also another negative for vlogging for the X-T3 is there's no built-in stabilization on the camera itself. The lens has stabilization, so it shouldn't be like ridiculously bad, but let's just walk around a bit. Let's actually check and see if we're recording. Okay, hooray, we're recording. I really am starting to like this camera an awful lot, which gives me pause because I'm not sure which of all my 3 cameras right now that I'm gonna end up keeping at the end of this. So my plan was to originally just get rid of the A7 III, keep the GH5, but then the X-T3 came out and it's like everything I would want in the GH5. So it's a tough call. The only thing I really wish the X-T3 had was a little bit more slow motion. The GH5 can do 180 frames per second. This does 120 frames per second. It's not terrible. I just wish it could do a little more, but could make it tough. Man, I can't remember the last time we were out vlogging. It's crazy. It's crazy, right? Okay, let's head back. And for fun, let's record the rest of the video with the X-T3. Let's swap. Whew. Look at all that APS-C goodness. Poor GH5. It's like it's bigger, but yet it's smaller at the same time. It's a weird relationship. So I've only been recording video with this camera for 2 days. This isn't meant to be an in-depth video. We will do a more in-depth video in the future, but let's talk about some of the things that I really like and that I really don't like about the X-T3 after 2 days. Let's start off with something that isn't really good or bad, but I do wish was included in the camera. I really wish the X-T3 had in-body stabilization. Now, I know Fuji has the X-H1 as their flagship video camera, and it does have a lot of their video-centric features like stabilization. But the X-T3 with stabilization would have crushed the market under an iron fist that we would never have gotten out from under. Maybe that's good or bad. Some will disagree. I know a lot of videographers don't like IBIS as it messes with other forms of stabilization, but as a one-man crew, it really helps me for my B-roll and when I'm just out and about filming. Okay, now on to the things that I don't like about the X-T3 so far. Now I'm not 100% sure if this is Fuji fault or if it's my monitor's fault, but for cameras that don't have articulating touchscreens, which is unfortunately like every good mirrorless camera these days, I use an Andicine A6 4K capable monitor. You can see it right now. Now it works fine for every other frame rate up to 4K 30 frames per second, but the second I put it into 4K 60 frames per second, it no longer sends the signal. This could be my monitor's fault, but it perfectly works with my GH5 in 4K 60 frames per second. That basically means I won't be able to use the 4K 60 frames per second until I either find a monitor with this capability or I use the phone app more to check, the framing to make sure everything's working, and the phone app is pretty bad. Something else I'm not a big fan of is the menu system. This is my very first Fuji camera, and there is always a learning curve when jumping into a new ecosystem, but this has been a way steeper curve than I was expecting. After 2 days, I've pretty much gotten the hang of it, but if you are new to cameras and if you have never used a Fuji before, you're gonna need to allot yourself some extra time to get comfortable with the menu system. I mean, there is a lot, and that's the thing. It's not that it's overly complicated, it's just that there's a lot in it to go through, and they didn't really label everything in a way that was easy for me. Like I said, I did get it, but as somebody coming from Sony and Panasonic menus, this was a whole different world. One last thing that irks me, and I wasn't able to get any screen footage of this while it was happening, but if you leave on eye autofocus, you can see it right here. It's, focusing on my eye. But if you leave that on and you're not recording faces, sometimes it will think that there's an eye in your frame and it will pull your focus away from where you have it designated. So for example, I'm recording this flower, but the camera thinks there is an eye somewhere else in the frame, no matter where I have the autofocus box. It will pull the focus away from where I want it to where it thinks the eye is. The obvious answer is to only turn on eye autofocus if you're recording a face, but just be aware if you leave it on, it could ruin your shot. And that's about it with the dislikes. So far, I have been really impressed with this Herculean little camera. Now let's talk about my favorite part of this video, and that is the things I actually like about the X-T3, because there's a lot. First up, image quality. This camera produces a really nice image. I don't do any color grading on my footage. I need a great image straight out of camera because I have a really quick online turnaround. And I'll tell you what, the hype about the Eterna picture profile is real. It has a really nice, soft, film-like image, and all of the X-T3 footage you've seen so far today has been in the Eterna profile with no grading. It's a little less saturated than I normally do, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. It has a really natural color scheme and makes, Bill Utah's gonna make fun of me for this, but it makes the skin look really nice. I really like the Eterna profile. Next up, and actually my favorite feature, and believe me, I know this is gonna sound weird, I know. The accessory port door comes off. Now, you might decide to click off the video right here. I mean, who is this crazy guy? He's got this new camera with all these high-profile professional features, and his favorite feature is taking a part off the camera? Yes. Here's some history on this. Longtime viewers know that until recently, I've been using the Sony A7 III. I started using it since it was released. It's an awesome camera, but the port doors are some of the worst designed I've ever seen, and I'm not talking in hyperbole when I say this almost makes the camera unusable for me. Look at this. Once you've plugged in a monitor, a microphone, external power if you're using it to live stream, you've got so much crap and mess of cables, sometimes you just can't plug them in because it always gets in the way of these stupid little doors. I hate them, like a lot. So being able to take the door off and plug it in wherever you want is so good. Like, it's a quality of life thing that may be just for me personally, but it is no kidding my favorite feature. Something else I really like, even though I complained about it a few moments ago, is the eye autofocus while video recording. Now, I've never known Fuji to have a really killer autofocus system. I've never really used Fuji before, but this one is pretty darn good, and it tracks the eye fantastically well. Look. It just stays on the eye, even when recording in video. The Sony A7 III has eye autofocus, but it only works when taking photos. This works in video. it's incredible. I mean, it's seriously great autofocus. Tracks eyes fantastically well. I will say that when you put sunglasses on, it did lose me a few times, but indoors, or if you don't have very sensitive eyes, what, my eyes are sensitive, I wear sunglasses all the time, this feature is amazing. Another major benefit for me is the sensor itself. My favorite sensor size is APS-C. It gives you the benefits of a bigger sensor with better low light and more control over your depth of field, while also giving you the recording benefits of smaller sensors. Also, the lenses don't need to be bigger than my camera bag to get a good image. One of the reasons that I personally won't be able to do full frame cameras long term is those lenses are just too big for my filming setup. A full frame lens means I have to leave something behind. I don't carry around a lot when I make videos. I have to have small gear. So the sensor and even the kit lens are able to work really well to basically give me exactly the image I want straight out of the camera. It's an incredibly versatile system. There's more that I could say that I like about it, but I'll save that for a more in-depth video in the future. Basically, the X-T3 is almost a perfect merger of the two top online video systems currently on YouTube. And I think it's a good merger of the full frame features of something like the A7 III and the high-end video features of the GH5, which segues really well because this week we'll be comparing it against those two cameras. They are my two favorite cameras so far ever. This could be a perfect marriage of the two. But if you find something that you want to see compared, leave a comment below. I think it's really great. I'm very much considering buying one. We'll see, but I'm very, very excited. Thanks for watching.